Hello, my name is Henry Tenby, and welcome to this edition of Model Moment. In this show, we're going to be reviewing the model that's presented in front of me. It's a gorgeous Hawker Siddeley 748 manufacturer's model, and let's get on with the show. So here we go. I'm going to give you a tour, around the world tour of this model. It is a 1/72nd scale expanded foam or resin production of a Hawker Siddeley 748 2B, and it's dating from, I'm going to say late 70s, probably 1977, 78, thereabouts. The model's yellowing a little bit. So this 748 2B was the uprated Rolls-Royce Dart engine, higher gross weight, better field performance version of the 748 that Hawker Siddeley, or I should say British Aerospace, introduced in the mid-70s to their existing clients that operated the 748. So if you were a 748 operator, your dream was to upgrade and operate the 2B version of the 748. It was a real great performer on gravel strips, and this model was used as a sales piece for this model. So yeah, she's 1/72nd scale and very nice and accurate. I should point out that the props are my own addition. They weren't actually furnished with these clear spinners. I fabricated those myself. And if we get out the trusty ruler, we'll measure her in. And yeah, so there you go. That's a foot. So she measures roughly 13 inches nose to tail, and her span is about 21 inches. So 748 is not a very common model to see in the form of travel agent models. You have to find them in England. They do show up at the shows in England. They're not terribly expensive. For whatever reason, the models don't attract a huge interest amongst hardcore model collectors in the US, but I like it. I'm Canadian, and I've flown on a number of 748s over the decades, and I love flying on 748s. I love Rolls-Royce Dart engines, and I love sitting right about there so I can watch those props and savor the sound of the engines. So this particular aircraft, the registration number is G Bravo Golf Juliet Victor, which is a real airplane. It was the actual airplane that was painted in this scheme. And let's have a look at who the model was made by. It is AGM. AGM says Hospital Road, Hounslow, Middlesex. AGM, which was a model maker in the 1970s, it became part of AGI Phelps, I believe, in later years, and still exists today in the form of Curvature, the Curvature group. So these models were produced in pretty good quantities, I think, for handout to prospective clients of British Aerospace back in the day. And the more rare version of these models would be the airline livery models, those models that were painted for actual customers versus the manufacturer scheme. But it's quite an intricate color scheme with the over-the-top wraparound scheme and the white, and the integrating the colors, decal paint. It was a bit of a complicated process, I'd say, for doing this model back then. I would say it's probably a shared mold with executive display models and Westway models and AGI. They probably all used the same mold when they produced these models. There was sharing of molds back then, I'm sure of that. And whoops, here, we lost a spinner. There you go. You see the spinners come off as easy as that. And I've written a book on travel agent display models. If you'd like to learn more about AGI Phelps and their models and associated companies like Westway Models and executive display models, they all produced 748 models. You can read about AGI Phelps and these other British aircraft display model makers in my book, The Aircraft Display Model Collector, Investor, and Appraisal Guide. It's about 160 pages of all color, and I talk about all the manufacturers of models, but especially these English models and the values of these models. So check it out. You can learn more about my book and even purchase my book on my website, henrytenby.com. So I do have a few other HS748 models in my collection. As I say, it's not overly popular just because it's kind of a specialist interest, the 748. They don't attract massive values, probably in the $100 or $200 range. I like the models a lot. They're starting to show their age because they're not metal. They are resin, fiberglass, etc. But no matter how you slice it, they are very, very nice models, and I like them. Vogler models in Nova Hamburg, Brazil, produced a range of 748 models because the 748 was popular down in Brazil because Varig operated them in the late 1960s and 1970s, and they were also in Argentina, and other air forces had them throughout South America. So Vogler made a number of the models, but Vogler produced a 1/50th scale HS748. I'd love to have one of those in my collection. I've seen them in Varig markings, and but I've never once seen one for sale or trade in all my decades of collecting. But I hope you've enjoyed this tour of the British Aerospace 748, and I hope you will share your models. If you have 748 examples in your collection, please do include comments below regarding your 748 models. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love to see a thumbs up. I'd appreciate that very much. And thank you for tuning in, and I hope to see you on our next episode. Until then, happy collecting, and we'll see you then.